Welcome back to Highly Respected. I'm your host, Scott Greer, and today we're going to have a incredible episode. I know you guys were like, whoa, is he going to say just an above average or a mediocre episode? And then boom, you're like, oh, thank God, it's going to be an incredible episode. So hopefully you guys sit back, relax. You're driving home on your Halloween day, get racing back home to listen to Highly Respected at its 5 o'clock time, or you're live streaming it from its 5 o'clock time. I don't know if anyone's getting off before 5, but we're going to pretend everyone's racing home at 4:30 to get back to catch the premiere time of the show. But we're going to have that today. I may have a little bit of a Halloween-esque attitude or style today for what we may talk about. Maybe talk about the Halloween movies at the end. But the important topic we're going to discuss today, I think you guys should know what it's to be about by the title. We're going to talk about Elon Musk now owning Twitter. It appeared at times that he wasn't going to buy Twitter. I think I may have even predicted that it doesn't look good for him buying Twitter. Because there's a lot of drama and upheavals. He tried to back out of the deal, then he got sued, and then he eventually bought Twitter for the $44 billion price tag. And even up until he bought it, there's like drama because he waited till the deadline to buy it. But he bought it. He fired all their senior leadership, and he's tried to make sure that they don't get their massive multi-million payouts, which is good. Parag, the CEO's gone. Vijaya, that's her name, Vijaya, is gone, and she was the one leading all the censorship efforts, including trying to kick off Trump from the platform. All of them are gone. Now Elon is in control. So what happens next? Well, and there's a few things that he's already announced. First off, like any time when this happened, when Elon bought Twitter or announced he was going to try to buy Twitter in April, all these people came back and decided that there's no rules. I can say whatever I want and do whatever I want on the platform. And just like back in April when they tried to do this, it turned out that it hasn't changed that much. A lot of these people are still in charge. And there was a massive ban wave this weekend. A ton of people were banned. And even some of the people coming back were banned as well. So there's not that much of a change, and Elon Musk has said that there's not going to be any changes until he has a content moderation council formed over what type of content is going to be allowed and who's going to be reinstated on Twitter. As he has announced that banned accounts will now be able to appeal their suspensions, and some of them will at least be allowed back. There was reports over that all of them will be allowed back, but he's saying simply that the Content Moderation Council will decide their fates of whether they're allowed back or not. He has been trying to fire a lot of people at Twitter, which is good because a lot of these people are involved in moderating content. A lot of these people are not really doing anything for the platform. They're just kind of like monitors of what's going on the scene. And even if the rules don't theoretically change or change at the senior level, fewer people moderating content and being able to weaponize in behalf of leftists to censor people, I think that's a good thing. As long as you have fewer people, there will be freer speech on Twitter if there's fewer people monitoring it and censoring it. So that's a good thing. But through the big changes, they're yet to be seen. Of what Elon's going to do, but it is good that he's trying to clear house, especially of a lot of the worst offenders, such as this Vijaya woman, who the last name I'm gonna have a little problems pronouncing the last name. Vijaya Gata or Gata, I don't know. I will call her just Vijaya. It's just funny to just call her by her first name. It's like Parag. I'm not even going to try to pronounce Parag's last name. Agrawa. I don't know. Who cares what how do you pronounce their last name? But anyway, it's good that some of these people are eliminated and kicked out of the company. That they were a negative influence on Twitter, making it more censorious and less open to free speech. So that's already a positive that he's done in that regard. Now, what else can he do or that he used to be seen? Now, the other announcement that appears likely, even though I am doubtful he may do this, is that he's about to charge for verification, is that all the blue checks are now going to have to pay up. They're going to have to pay $20 a month to keep their blue check. And you guys may know a blue check. He may be talking right now to you. And so it's bad news for, once again, Scott M. Greer, blue check mark, libtard journalist Scott M. Greer, of whether he's going to pay up to Elon Musk. First off, I'm not 100% positive that he's going to go through with this, because a huge concern, especially from the deep state and these powerful institutions of the global American empire, is that Elon is going to turn Twitter into a hub of quote unquote disinformation and hate speech and these things. And requiring journalists and others to pay to be verified. First off, it's also probably going to piss off some of these celebrities, even though, of course, like Kim Kardashian and Kanye West and whoever can obviously afford $20 a month. That's like nothing to them, obviously. So some of these people can afford that, but they also don't like the charging celebrities, which a huge reason that Twitter became big is that they got celebrities on the platform who are talking and they're sharing their thoughts and views, and that's why people came to the platform. Imagine if Instagram started charging, Kim Kardashian, the Kardashian clan, to be verified on Instagram. The whole market value of Instagram is driven by these celebrities and verified users. So instead of, paying them to provide the user base, they're demanding that they pay them, even though it's more of the platform that's getting worth out of the users rather than the users, getting out. It depends on the situation. Some people benefit more from the platform than the platform benefits from them. I would probably say I'm in that category. I'm pretty sure Twitter would not want me drawing an audience. But there's just like a ton. There are tens of thousands of just like random journalists and other people who have, and random political candidates who ran and got blown out in a primary, who have verified accounts. And it's like, why do they, in some ways it's like, why do they need the verification? It's like, it's time to, turn these people into pay pigs if they want to keep their verification. And all these people saying that they're not going to pay for verification, they are absolutely going to pay for verification. People want that status symbol. People want it. And there's also benefits to that. Is like, you're not going to be, people aren't going to, they're not going to have imposters out there. I would have a lot of imposters. Some of them would be, all good fun trolls. I think that would be most of the people. But it could be annoying because some of these people would post, some things I would never say, some very unrespected things that they would post on Twitter in efforts just to like troll or whatever. I probably would not like that if it's like, it goes viral. It's like Scott Greer actually said this. It's like, no, I did not say that. But there's going to be a couple people like that who would do that for me. But it's another thing. It does add like some credibility to you if you're a verified, especially with journalists, because one thing, if there's no verification, you're gonna have people pretending to be these journalists, and they're just gonna tweet out, once again, it'll be funny trolls for us. It'll be like, breaking, nuclear missile headed to New York City, and like, oh my god, this is what this well-respected journalist at the New York Times said. And then obviously it's not going to be that. And that's actually what's going to proliferate, is it's going to be a ton of like this troll disinformation. It's like breaking, Joe Biden assassinated, or this like type of information to create like a shitstorm. And there's like no way to quickly verify these claims. And these claims will just go viral on the internet. Think about this, is that Trump issued a statement praising Elon Musk as an African-American business owner, and like how he was so happy that they took over Twitter and that all these people were gone. It was obviously a fake statement, but it was shared by numerous verified accounts and other big accounts, and everyone believed it. And even though there's like people pointing out like this is clearly fake, more people were sharing it and believing it than saying it was fake. And then the same would happen here. Is it's like, if like all these journalists were not paying for their verification, and it was easier to pretend to be them, then there would be so many more examples of just people promoting fake news. It would be funny and entertaining, but obviously it would make Elon Musk's ownership of Twitter more problematic in the eyes of the globalist American empire, and it would make them more willing to come down harder on Twitter. And there could be, somewhat of a exodus, particularly among the bigger celebrities. If they really just don't. It's like more of the principle of the matter, and that they don't want to pay for something that the platform benefits from their presence, rather than the other way around. Like, it's not like Tom Hanks need to be on Twitter. I don't think Tom Hanks tweets that much, but Seth Rogen, maybe someone like that. He doesn't benefit that much from being on Twitter, I guess. It's probably like harmful for him. I'm not even thinking of Seth Rogen. I'm trying to think of an actor or celebrity who really heavily uses Twitter. As a lot of them use Twitter much more often back in the early 2010s than they do now. And they moved on to more Instagram, I guess, because it's less hostile. But it's like same with like these athletes. Like LeBron James would be a good example. He uses Twitter pretty frequently. He's criticizing Elon Musk, saying that like hate speech is not free speech. Of course, the great genius of of LeBron James, constitutional scholar LeBron James, is saying this. Someone like LeBron James, like, it's the principle of the matter. I mean, they of course can afford it. And some of it will be stay, but they may be like they're demanding I pay up for this. Now, a lot of these journalists, one thing is like the status symbol of this is what they would do with this. Is that some people do not want to have the impression that they're paying for this. Like, I would probably get made fun of if I paid for the verification. I don't know if what's going to happen. I'm not 100% certain it's going to happen. It's supposed to come out on Monday, so wait till Monday, and then I surrender $20 a month to them. I probably would, for a couple reasons. One, being verified does create more protection from you for censorship. In my experience, they are more hesitant to ban blue checks than they are ordinary people who don't have the blue checks. I think that's why a lot of these people who, there was so many demands to ban them for a long time. Someone like Nick Fuentes, who had the verification, and he lasted for a long time on the platform, even though there were several people trying to get him banned. I think some of it was due in part to having a blue check. And there's several other cases of people who have blue checks who they would like to ban, like Jack Posobiec. They would try to ban. There's a lot of entities trying to out to get him. Same with me. So there's like you do get a degree of protection, I believe, with a verification. I think they're more willing to just like ban people who are not verified versus people who are. Can't quantify this. I can't just point this out. This is just a sentiment I have. And it would be like that. And it's also, the fact is like, I'm thinking about Twitter as like advertising for me. I clearly probably get more of a benefit from being on the platform. The platform gets a benefit from me. I'm not a major celebrity. I'm just a guy sharing my highly respected opinions on there. And in order to promote the podcast and things, I probably need to remain on Twitter. The blue check mark is not as important, but it's more about ensuring that I stay having a little bit of a greater degree of security of being on there. So it's more like an advertising fee of just like keeping like people posted on what I'm doing with a podcast or what I'm writing or any of those type of things that like I'm able to promote my work. And it's harder to do that on other platforms. So it's like that. I would probably and also to prevent the numerous Scott M. Greer imposters that would arise without a blue check mark and would go viral, and everyone would be sharing the tweets. And there's so many people who are stupid that like I have like people, if you go to on like some of these other platforms. And you see, and they're not, as wise to irony and sarcasm and the things that people are wise on to Twitter is that, like, there'd be, like, obviously fake stuff that, like, people would post. And they'd be like, can you believe what Scott is posting? Like, this is outrageous. And so some of these people would just, promote this material and be a victim of fake news. So there's reasons to do it. I mean, it's, if you view, like, Twitter as, like, a type of a business for you, you would probably do that. I don't know if these like journalists who like were a BuzzFeed intern 6 years ago and they're now working at like McDonald's are going to pay up, to keep. They're like verified and they have like 2,000 followers. I don't think there's going to be some people. Actually, when I got verified, I only had 300 followers. This was 7 years ago. This had to be in 2015, maybe even been in 2014. I think it was early 2015 when I got verified because Daily Caller offered to get everyone. They had a link up to get everyone verified. So all these like random Daily Caller journalists who like never tweeted, and a lot of them never exceeded like 1,000 followers. I still see people who come up from conservative media, and they have under 1,000 followers, and they're verified, and they're not their company's not going to pay for the verification either. So I think New York Times and CNN will pay for their journalists to be verified. So it'll be coughing up. I think it is a way that Elon Musk wants to make all these blue check journalists who hate on him to pay up to use his service. I don't think it's like, some of it is a money making venture on his part that, and this is an important thing to keep in mind with whatever Elon Musk wants to do, is that he wants to make a profit from Twitter. There is an example that he may just want to make so much of a profit from Twitter that he can make his money back that he spent on it, or make even a little bit more money than he spent on it and sell it off, that he's not interested in keeping it around that long. He just wants to turn it into a profitable platform where he can sell off for a lot of money and then, move on. But I mean, his chief concern with Twitter, I don't think is so much the free speech angle. It is the profit angle. I think Elon Musk is the wealthiest man in the world for a reason. It's not because he's like motivated by principle or these things. It's because he's motivated about ways to make even more money than he is. I mean, that's the same with a lot of billionaires. Now, he's interested in free speech. He obviously doesn't like censorship, but his primary goal is to make Twitter profitable, not to protect free speech. But he is more pro free speech than the previous owners of Twitter. And there are more opportunities to protect free speech now than there were before. But people should keep their hopes reasonable and noticing that he wants to make a profit. And that's why he wants to do the charging people for verification, because he wants to make it immediately profitable. Maybe he's in a rush to sell it off, maybe in a year or two. Would probably not be good if he sells it off before the 2024 presidential election. I think that would actually be very bad, because whoever else would take over from him would not be as fan of free speech as he is, and would be more likely to bring back censorship in that regard. But as long as he keeps it past the 2024 presidential election, I think it'll be a good thing. But that is like the motivating factor. I also do think that he wants to do this because he wants to punish journalists and blue checks who always attack him, which I understand. If you're like a powerful person, you're the wealthiest man in the world, and you have all these like pissant blue checks who think that they're more powerful than you, who try to bring you down just because of you, shit posting or tweeting, and you had a means to punish them and to, show off that you have more power than them. Why wouldn't you do that? It's like, why wouldn't you do that? And these journalists, like, all they could do is just like complain on Twitter and be like, it's like the same when he posted something about the Paul Pelosi situation, which I'm not really going to talk about because I don't really know the situation. I think it is funny that with that story, that when it happened, I immediately was like, it just sounds like a crazy guy broke into his house. I don't know what there's something weird going on there, but I knew when it happened, and then this guy had apparently made some right-wing like crazy blog post or something that no one was reading. I was like, the right is going to try to find a way to say that this guy was like a federal agent or something, but instead it turned out he was they're all going with that he's a gay prostitute or something. I don't know the full story, so maybe it's true, who knows. I don't know, there's something weird going on there, but it's like funny that like Elon Musk, in response to Hillary Clinton, like shares this theory, and all these people were like, Twitter support, like Twitter support. They're acting like, hello, Twitter support, please ban your owner. They're completely powerless to Elon Musk because they, for the longest time, they relied on their power to ratio and to bring out Twitter support on their side. And now they're like, Twitter support is not going to ban its owner. Like, they're not going to lock Elon Musk's account. And tens of millions of people are on Twitter, and they have to pay attention to what Elon Musk is saying. And so they're completely powerless in this situation. And now Elon Musk is going to rub it in by making them pay for their much valued and much desired blue checks. And maybe old Scott M. Greer, CIA agent or Mossad agent Scott M. Greer, maybe I'll have to call up Israel to help pay for my verification badge. But I'd probably... I don't like the principle of it. I think it is corny, and I know people would are gonna mock me for it, but it's like it's probably worth it for someone like myself. There's not many other blue checks on there. It's more just like to keep ensuring that I keep Twitter. I think I would be more likely to be banned without the verification. Who knows? Maybe not. No, maybe I might be more likely to get banned because they're like verifying. It's like, why is this guy still verified? Why is this guy still on their platform? And they may kick me off. And so it is life. You don't know what's happening. But we'll see what happens with that. I still have doubts that it'll go through because of the factor of that. He knows that somebody will probably eventually tell him what's going to happen with the disinformation angle of the quote unquote disinformation angle is that if all these people decide to no longer pay for their verification, and it's much easier to pretend to be like these respected journalists, and then people then began trolling and sharing hilariously fake news on this, and then it really shows that Twitter becomes into a disinformation hub. Then the government's going to try to come in and try to ensure he's not making much profit from Twitter, and that his life becomes much more difficult. So he may not go along with it for that reason. Is that he unfortunately has to allow these journalists to stay verified for free. Otherwise, that they're not paying, all these people could just say that they're like a journalist and then just share ridiculously fake news about like stuff. So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, next week he wants it out November 7th, or these Twitter engineers get fired. So we'll have to see on that regard. But there's other things too. We spend a lot of time on the Twitter for verification front. So it now comes to time to the answer of who will be allowed back on the platform, because this is important. Matter, because this is what people want. They want these big accounts to return. They want free speech to restored. And who will be allowed back? The people who are going to be immediately allowed back are like Babylon Bee. I don't think their account has been banned, but they were locked over a tweet that they refused to delete, something with gender stuff. They will probably be allowed back. I think James Lindsay will probably be allowed back. Like these people who are liked by mainstream conservatism who have been banned. Pete Hegseth, I think, is still banned. There's an account who's like I think it was somebody pretending to be him. They'll probably allow back all those type of mainstream conservative types who are there. And also it's a discussion of what they will allow back on to, people are going to say. I'm going to say this, like 2016 Twitter is not going to be recreated. That it's not. They're still going to censor people who are, doing gas chamber memes and shouting slurs. Like that's still probably going to get you censored. Like you are not going to be allowed to drop the type of stuff you see on Gab and Telegram on Twitter in the same way that people could have done on Twitter in 2016. Like those Wild West days are probably not coming back. But what would be happen is like clearer standards of what's allowed, and the things that affect normal conservatives are what they like to discuss, particularly when it's related to COVID, vaccines, and especially the transgender issue. I think that there will be a greater degree of free speech there than there is for the stuff that right-wing Twitter was posting in 2016. You're not going to see that return, even though that's what like people come back. It's like so funny. Like whenever I want to go on Gab, like it's like 2015 Twitter like never ended. Like this stuff you see, all the memes and stuff, it's like frozen. In some of the stuff is like frozen in time, and even some of the people coming back, it's like, wow, it's like a blast from the past. It's like there was an episode of South Park a long time ago where they like unfroze a guy who was like stuck in like 5 years before. I think this was like set in 1999. So it was like the guy was stuck in like 1993 or 94. And it had all this joke about like how the early 90s are completely different from the late 90s. I think there's like a time where he can't believe the Atlanta Falcons are in the Super Bowl. He's like, what? Because the Atlanta Falcons were not a very good team when he was frozen. And it's like that. And it's like he's unfrozen. He can't handle the time period that there's like 5 years ahead of him. And that's really what I feel like when these people come back. It's like they're frozen in time. They're like, they haven't changed from 2017. And they're like how it's like the new world that they're different. They still have the same memes and attitudes and stuff that they're sharing. It's amusing to see it. It's like seeing what people were posting about maybe in 2017, 2016, and them just like not changing at all, and it's there. I don't think, but some of the stuff is just not going to be allowed. I think this weekend the last weekend they may have had their time, but there was like a massive ban wave, so these people are obviously going to be censored, and a lot of these people are not going to get their accounts back unless they're like bigger. Like there'll probably be a few examples of people who maybe got banned who weren't that big of a deals, or they got banned for like stupid reasons like ban evasions. But like some of the bigger right wing accounts that maybe weren't verified, I don't think are going to be allowed back. The biggest one is going to be Trump, which Elon Musk is going to allow Trump back. What in what form is a question. I made a point that there's like a campaign account. They may allow some of his campaign accounts. And I was surprised by this, but Trump War Room is still on there, which I thought that Twitter had censored all these accounts, because I remember when Trump got banned, he started using other people's accounts that he was trying to, like he tried to use POTUS, and they suspended the president of the United States account, unlocked it so Trump couldn't tweet, and then he tried to use like some of his advisors and staff, and then they began deleting those, and I thought they deleted some of his campaign accounts too. I didn't realize that Trump War Room was still around until someone pointed it out to me, and I was like, oh, it's still around, it's still posting stuff. So, but it may have like a personal campaign account that's like a little bit more polished than old Trump that they may allow. But I think they are going to allow Trump back, which would be a huge, huge deal. I mean, a lot of people don't like Trump, but Trump brings a lot of energy to Twitter. He posts, like, people like seeing his Truth Social stuff. It's so funny. It is such good content. It generates a lot of energy and a lot of discussion. It really makes Twitter a lot better by him being on there. Just thinking about like his time as president, about all the funny shit he would just tweet on a regular basis. And now he would just like come back and there'd be all this attention about it. And I think new Trump is a lot better than President Trump, or like punish Trump is a lot better than President Trump. He's more willing to engage in our issues and stir up shit about like things that we care about. So he would have like a ton of great comments and really drive the discussion from Twitter, and it of course would make our enemies miserable. So I think, and it would just like create a rally point for right-wing Twitter. A lot of right-wing Twitter just descends into flame wars and amongst ourselves, and people like getting really black-pilled and not having any unifying factor to get them on board with things. And having Trump there, even though a lot of people on the right hate him, it would create a rally point for us to, this is what we're about. We're focused on his presidential campaign. This gives us a unifying cause. And the same way that it was in the case of 2016, you'll never replicate that. But even in 2020, like it created a much better atmosphere and vibe for people to direct a lot of their energy into this one unifying cause, which is like Trump getting reelected. So I think that would be the case if Trump came back. And I think that would be a huge, massive positive. And journalists are very worried about that. Like there's a lot of journalists who are like, I don't really care about like some of these people from Gab or Telegram coming back and like posting their own shit. It's like, whatever, like it's not going to be that, like most people won't notice it. But what the real concern is like Trump, because Trump, like they can't ignore that. Trump is going to be the most noticed user on this platform. Like all of his tweets are going to go viral. All the attention everything he says is going to be a news story, and they can't ignore it. And this is why they really are terrified by the prospect of Trump coming back. But Trump will come back. I think Elon Musk will bring him back. It may not be in the form we want, maybe just relegated to a more polished, restrained Trump presidential campaign account, but he's going to come back. And if he comes back on Twitter, that's going to mean other platforms are going to allow him back, because if they set the standard, then Facebook will bring him back, and that's like a huge victory for us. I mean, it'd be better if like everyone came back, but as long as like the leader comes back, it creates the energy we need to move forward and to, unify and to be more constructive what we're posting about, rather than being at each other's throats on that. But there's other big accounts that they're probably not going to allow back, and those are the accounts that highlighted by the Anti-Defamation League. Now, the ADL highlighted five specific counts. Had to count them up on the bullet points that were here of accounts that they're worried about coming back. And the people are David Duke. I don't think David Duke's going to come back. I don't think anybody particularly wants David Duke back, or he doesn't really have any particular base of support anymore. Nick Fuentes, they call conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, Steve Bannon, and misogynist Andrew Tate as the five people that they're most worried about. They're also said, in addition to Trump, here's the people, they're the high-profile and dangerous individuals who may be allowed to return. This is essentially saying the ADL is putting out a list and saying to Elon, do not allow these specific people back. There people who are not on the list may be allowed back. Some of them, there could be random accounts that people forgot that got banned a long time ago, like someone like Stefan Molyneux, who got axed, I think, in 2019 or early 2020, which he then completely fell off the face of the earth. He may get his reinstated his account back because it seems like the Anti-Defamation League and these other powerful entities don't really care that much about him, so he could come back. But those five, I think it's Andrew Tate. Well, Andrew Tate sort of is back on Twitter. He came up with a new account. It's just not verified. I don't think it's been banned yet. I'd have to check, but he is sort of back already. Who would be allowed from that list? David Duke's not going to be allowed from that list. Nick, I don't think will be allowed if the ADL is making a big point about him returning. I think if the ADL was not making a big point about him returning, he would have a better opportunity. And the one unfortunate thing with a lot of these big right-wing accounts is that they don't have powerful or influential conservatives to go to bat for them, demanding that they'll be reinstated. You really need someone like Don Jr. and Fox News and those types to say, like, why aren't you bringing them back? And unfortunately for a lot of accounts like Nick, they don't have that capacity to bring back. I think the good thing is that I think they'll be less anal about people doing ban evasion. And if you could so they may, so for some people, I know like Nick tries to come back under all accounts and like they ban him within like 24 hours. I don't know any other account where it's just like that quick to ban them. And there's a couple of other accounts too that are like always try to come back. The Mel Gibson fan, Mel Gibson fan's another one where he would like have like Mel Gibson fan 78, and then 79 next when he's banned. There's like a lot of right-wing accounts like that they ban them within a short amount of time, no matter how long they've been on there. But I think they'll be less zealous in trying to get people who are who are doing ban evasions. So I don't see a major push. Alex Jones would be interesting because Alex Jones, he is friends with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan talks to Elon Musk. Joe Rogan would probably recommend to have Alex Jones on. And I think Elon Musk, in a way of showing solidarity for free speech, would try to make an example for Alex Jones. And Alex Jones, when he was on Twitter, he had like a staffers running it. It wasn't, I don't believe it was like him. He wasn't really posting anything wild or crazy on there. And I think Elon Musk could know that he would like follow the rules if he got his account back, and he wouldn't cause that much trouble, but it'd be a way to like show like, I'm for free speech. I allowed Alex Jones back. That would be the interesting person that he may do a standard for. Same with Andrew Tate, because Andrew Tate has been banned by every other platform. Same with Alex Jones. And I think if they were allowed back, both of them would know to kowtow to whatever rules that would stay within the parameters. Maybe Alex Jones would not. I think Andrew Tate would more so than any of the other people. Bannon, I don't even know if he was weird on Twitter. I don't remember which account he had, but it wasn't like actively posting. I think it was just posting War Room clips. I think they'll allow War Room back on his podcast, which was like mainly the main point of having Twitter is that it would post all their clips from their show. I think they would allow that back, but maybe not Bannon. If Bannon wanted to come back, I think Bannon could because he has enough influence and power to convince people to come back. So out of those people, the ADL is going to raise this most concern, and it is them sending a signal is like these are the people we do not want back to coming onto Twitter. And I think if those listed, that Alex Jones would create a lot of problems for Musk. I don't think Tate would as much, even though he just got banned. It was just simply journalists harassing tech platforms, and this is who was there. But I don't think the globalist American empire particularly cares that much about Andrew Tate. It was just simply journalists getting extremely mad that he became the most popular person on TikTok, and they didn't like his message, so they wanted to eliminate him. And it's the same with Alex Jones, and even with someone and it's probably in the case of Nick and all these other people that he declares racist. That is like the government who really does not want them back on. I don't think the government is that concerned about Tate. They are concerned about Bannon, but probably not to the extent that they are about Jones and like Nick and other people like that. They would get very mad if Jones came back on. And Jones would also be there. Everyone has to now, with like this lawsuit over Sandy Hook, they're bringing him back as like a Sandy Hook truther who did this horrible damage to these parents. And I don't know if Musk would go as far as to defend him. But he may pick one of these people as his example to come back. Tate, he may just allow his ban evasion account that he has to just like remain, but he won't have his old account restored. And that might be it. And it might be the same with some of these other people. I don't think David Duke would be allowed. David Duke is always like the example of like who you not allow. And I don't think even among the right, like people don't care about Musk, or not Musk, but Duke. But somebody even like Nick may be able to create a new account that's like maybe it's like a thinly veiled version of him, or maybe it is him himself, and he can build up an audience and maybe not have to worry about immediately getting zapped. But having his hold account restored, I don't think I'm doubtful of that prospect if the ADL is mentioning him. But there may be one. I think he must try to do that with Jones due to the Joe Rogan connection. And also just wanting to create an example of like now free speech is restored, and having someone like that on the platform may be it. But I think having Trump itself would send that message too. So it'd be interesting to who he allows back. But that's another point I have to say is like, I think if you were, just had like, there'll be probably some examples of random accounts who got banned like 4 years ago, and then through the content moderation process, they got their account back. Like, it's going to be very arbitrary and just random of who gets their account back and who doesn't. I think if the ADL and these other groups like SPLC and stuff are like making a point that they don't want your account on Twitter, that you're probably not going to get restored, but there may be cases of you just building up another account and having it there and them allowing it as long as you're following the new terms of service that they have, then maybe that they'll allow that. So it'll be interesting to see when it comes to who's allowed back. I think Trump, it's guaranteed he'll come back. I think some of these more conservative types will come back. The old 2016 Wild West will not come back. I don't even think it would be beneficial to us because most of that would be, especially with a lot of people on the right have grievances against each other and want to use their grievances against whoever and maintain these like purity tests and these purity spiral and these litmus tests over what issues you may want to talk about. I can imagine that with some of these more Wignats who are coming back who would want to do that, is that most of the energy would be directed towards some of it on flame wars against other people on the right, rather than for a unified cause of like dunking on journalists and like helping to support Trump or another big figure like that. A lot of it would just be directed against ourselves, as they say. So Elon Musk Twitter, it will be better for the entire right, but I think it will benefit mainstream conservatives the most. Like, I was talking to somebody who's like saying like, well, if they allowed total free speech, we would be able to blow these mainstream conservatives out of the water. And I think this is just like some people like a type of 2016 revision. I wouldn't say 2016 revisionism because like people assumed this back at the time in 2016. And I don't think that like if some of the content that people want to do, it's not going to like blow conservatives out of the water. If you're like just posting like slurs and like these like gas chamber memes or whatever you want, ordinary people are probably not going to go for that. I mean, it was at the time in 2016, it was just a fun way. Some of that stuff was just a fun transgressive way of going after Con Inc. and all those people. But it's like a different time period. You can't recreate 2016 again, and that stuff would still be censored too. There's no that like Musk is not going to allow that stuff. I mean, advertisers are not going to. They're already threatening to boycott Twitter due to just because Musk bought it, and over the fears that they may be seeing offensive content again. And as I said, Elon Musk's main goal is profitability. He does not want to lose advertisers just so you can post, in towers. This is not what he's about, okay? He wants to make money here, and if advertisers are complaining about this stuff, then he's going to try to accommodate them to a certain extent. That's the fact of the nature. And people will be like, well, what happened to free speech? You got to remember, it's like Elon Musk's primary goal is to make money. And if too much free speech is getting in the way of that, he is going to shut down a lot of this content. So unlike Twitter in the past, where it wasn't advertiser driven for why they were censoring, it was journalist driven and also employee driven. This was the goals of it. And in the case of some of the bigger accounts like Trump, government driven, particularly with the Democratic Party. And that's why they censored so much in 2020, is because all of big tech thought Democrats were going to blow out Republicans, and they were worried Democrats were going to try to eliminate Section 230 and these other privileges that big tech has, and you wield antitrust legislation against them. And they were worried about that. And so they began censoring more to placate Democrats, to be like, oh, please don't censor us. We're eliminating your political enemies. We effectively deposed the president of the United States from social media. This is what we're doing. All you can. Please don't censor us. Now with them realizing Republicans are likely to take control in the midterms, they're not as censorious or not as eager for it as they were in 2020. And that's a huge reason. And also, government was also forcing them to censor stuff about COVID and vaccines all the time in 2020 and 2021. And, if anyone was talking about the lab leak theory, they would get instantly nuked. And so those are the three sources of it. Now with Elon Musk there, the government can still, journalists are probably not going to wield that much influence. Unless it's like some entities like the ADL and others who have like a lot of clout still have that influence. So he's not probably going to listen to them as much. With Democrats, he's probably not going to, he realizes that they're not going to be able to do anything against him. Biden may, try to use some methods, but Elon Musk has made his billions off of doing stuff with the government. He knows how to work this area, probably even better than Twitter's past operators. So I don't think he is as frightened by the government as he would, but they could unleash the pain box against him. I mean, they did force him to back down from his request for the Pentagon to pay him for Starlink over Ukraine. They can do some of these things at the same time with him. But in terms of employee-driven, Elon's not going to listen to them. Clearly he doesn't. He really does have a type of contempt for the employees, which is good for us. He's not going to listen to journalists as much as previous owners. I don't think, if CNN and Fox, if I was about to say Fox News, why did Fox News attack him? But CNN or Washington Post or whoever, he can just ignore, and he already has contempt for them. So those two factors are not going to have as much influence, but it's advertisers who will be susceptible to journalist pressure. And they've done this against Fox News and Tucker Carlson, Breitbart. They always go to the advertisers. And some of the advertisers, the people who are at the marketing department and stuff, who are like, oh, this site's going to be turned into a fascist hate speech zone. That will wield an influence. So that's another reason why we can't have the 2016 Wild West is not going to happen. If all the advertisers are if they're just seeing reports about this, and journalists are knowing what they're doing by highlighting their calculating, it's there were all these tweets, there was tens of thousands of tweets using this particular racial slur, and they're trying to promote that to say hey, hey, advertisers, do you want to advertise on a site that allows this racial slur to be said all the time? And it's wielding pressure on the advertisers to put pressure on Elon, whose primary goal is to make money. And so that has to be considered when you're thinking about how much free speech Elon Musk is going to allow. And I think conservatives will benefit the most because what the things that they've been getting censored for recently, primarily around the COVID vax, election stuff, and especially the transgender issue, is that I think Elon is going to be much more laissez-faire in allowing them to speak freely on those issues compared to what the dissident right trolling that they want to do. I think they'll crack down on the trolling, but they'll allow more discussion. But the transgender topic is probably the real battlefield over how much they're going to allow. Whether he's going to allow misgendering and these type of things, is whether people will still get banned for calling someone the wrong gender or whatever, or saying that this is like, or men are trans women are not women, or something of those people saying that those type of statements that people always want to say, or they're like, there are only two genders, and some people have been banned. That's going to be the real battlefield, because that lobby that wants that stuff censored is still going to want that stuff censored. And maybe they can wield advertisers to pressure Elon into censoring more of that. But Elon may take more of a stand against that. So it is, as I always want to say, it's interesting to see what will happen with this. But I have a few predictions. It's like, we are not going to, as I've said, this is probably the third time I've said this, we are not going to return back to the Wild West days of 2016. What will happen, I think the positive things that will happen is that Trump will be returned. I think they will define a clearer terms of service, which that's like a huge thing. I think if like Twitter was not arbitrary and just like banning people for random reasons, or just like one content moderator didn't like someone, if there were clear terms of service that you followed and you could abide by, that would make it much easier for people. And I think it would create, as long as they specifically pointed out what in terms of service people violated and what they were doing wrong, I think that would be a case. I also think that there will be more people successfully appealing suspensions and locks. I think there will be some people who will be restored. Some of the big right-wing accounts I don't think will be, if the ADL and the SPLC and others are saying that this is this is a red line we're not going to tolerate, and we'll go to advertisers if you allow these people back on. Those are things there, but I think there will be more free speech. It'll be more difficult to get banned than it was before. I think if Elon had not taken over, I think especially if the 2024 election went into full swing, that they would have cracked down even more. There have been tons and tons of censorship. I don't think that that'll be the case. And I think that around the presidential election, Elon Musk will be trying to avoid what social media did in 2020 on those matters, and I think there will be a lot more free speech around that, because there was just like tons of censorship. I mean, they would censor Trump ads. They'd say this is wrong, saying that Democrats want open borders. Like, they would censor anything dealing with election. Like, they went all in for Democrats and ensuring that Joe Biden was going to win the election. That's what big tech did. I don't think they're going to do that this time. And if Elon sets a standard for Twitter on this matter, then Zuckerberg at Facebook will follow that. I don't know if Google will follow that, but they'll be more inclined to be less censorious if Twitter is setting the example. And so with a lot of other platforms. So I think that'll be all good. But the thing we do need to keep our hopes and expectations realistic. The most important thing you got to remember is that Elon Musk wants to make money off of Twitter. It's secondary importance is protecting free speech. He does want a platform that has more free speech, but what he means by free speech is like the Babylon Bee is not being censored for satire, and people that have connections to him are not being censored or shut down or suppressed, or like someone like Joe Rogan is not going to get censored on Twitter anymore. So these people are going to be able to speak their minds freely on some range of subjects, but if that comes into conflict with his ability to make a profit off Twitter, I think he will choose profit over free speech. But at the same time, in order to have a profitable product, it has to promise free speech. It has to be an area where people know they're not getting censored, is that where people are able to speak freely. So it's going to be an interesting balance that he has, and it'll be interesting to strike. But I think it's ultimately a positive thing, even if we should temper our hopes and expectations. That compared to the previous ownership, he's going to be better. It can't be worse than them. It will be better. I think there will be, as I said, there will be, if he reduces the content moderation team significantly, that is a huge win. If he brings back Trump, which he's likely to do, that's going to be a huge win. And even with a smaller content moderation team, that will mean more free speech on the platform. And more people will not be getting banned for stupid reasons, and people will be able to speak more freely. And that will be a major win for us. And also, if they change the algorithms not to, punish people for being conservative or right wing, and people are more able to get their views out there across the platform, that will be a win. I think that he will change that. But you do need to keep in mind that he ultimately wants to make a profit. And he still, even though he owns it, he is still susceptible to advertiser pressure and to government pressure. And the government may come down on him hard if it becomes if the journalists are able to make it out to be a disinformation hub. If there's like these, if they get rid of reduced verification, and then there's like all these viral tweets of spreading comically fake news, that will give government the incentive to go after him. But I think with, Republicans taking control of the Congress and all of them liking Elon and Elon having good relationships with Republicans, and Democrats also being worried about what they can do, that I think it'll lead to more free speech and better things. But people need to, it's not going to be a return to 2016 again. And also, you just can't say, there's two reasons that you need to be careful about saying whatever you want. First off, you can still say this stuff on Twitter, but also people can still like dox you. And like I've seen with a lot of these people is that, people go on places like there's been a number of Gab users who've been doxxed recently, and they're just speaking their minds. They're speaking freely, and these guys still had real world consequences for that. And it's like trolling and stuff. Like, yeah, it's fun, but you also do need to keep in mind that there are people out there who live to expose who you are, and like going out there and seeing this activity. Yeah, your platform may allow you to say that, but Twitter is not. But this is also, even if you're on a platform that allows us to speak freely, that still doesn't mean your employer or your family or friends are going to be down with whatever you're saying. So this is just something to keep in mind with that. A point I always like to make. But I'm not like, I think trolling in its proper form is funny and it's good, but it's just something to keep in mind when you're doing that, even if the platform allows it. So those are my thoughts on Elon Musk buying Twitter. I think it's a positive thing, but he ultimately wants to make money out of it, and that's something that everyone needs to keep in mind. And no, we're not going to have a return to 2016. This is like my fourth or fifth time saying that, but it's an important point I want to make. The next topic I want to talk about, and I'll probably throw in some other issues in this topic to direct it, is Democrats are the end of the anti-war left. I think this was very clear when the Progressive Caucus, to much acclaim, they issued a letter saying that they wanted peace in Ukraine, that this was their goal, that they wanted a negotiated settlement in Ukraine, that this was wasting all these resources, and they were worried about the economic effects of the war on America. And this was issued by the Progressive Caucus, led by Pramila Jayapal, one of the worst Congress lawmakers there is. It's huge leftist, terrible on all these issues, but she issued this. And pretty much a day later, they retracted it and apologized for the letter. And when it was first issued, there was all these people like, wow, the anti-war left is back. Right and left coming together to secure peace. And I was like, I don't think this is going to happen. And sure enough, the day it was issued, there was already members saying, like, I retract my support for the letter. It was signed by like about 30 Democrats. And then the next day, they retracted it. It was like... Now, some of the reasons that they said they retracted is that it was supposed to be issued this summer, and then they changed their mind because... and they blamed it on staffers, even though there was like a a huge attention to it. I mean, if it was on staffers, I think they would have issued a retraction like an hour later or something of the sort, not a day later. A day later shows that they made whoever military power, whoever was responsible for it, underestimated how much the left supports the Ukraine war effort. You got to remember is that Ukraine is one of the three core issues that Democrats are running on. One is threats to democracy, January 6th. Oh, that's thrown in a lot. Two is Ukraine. Three is abortion. That's all they're campaigning on is that. They're now trying to throw in this effort that Democrats or Republicans will make the inflation or the economy worse. But it's all fallen on the wayside for supporting Ukraine, defending against threats to democracy, and and abortion. That's it. So the Democrats, the Progressive Caucus, went against one of the three core aims, the three core pitches for Democrats in the 2022 election cycle. That's just not going to work. And Democrats are so fervently pro-Ukraine. Just think about every liberal account that has a Ukrainian flag. This is like the Progressive Caucus saying we should reconsider gay marriage. That's how important Ukraine is to liberals all across this country, and even leftists. Even the left, the Chapo, DSA types, they don't even care about this issue that much. They have talked about, that there should be, an end to the war, some type of peace. They'll talk about how Ukrainians are neo-Nazis, but it's not that important to them. They rarely talk about it because the main thing is they don't want to be on the same side as Tucker Carlson and the Chuds. And the most important aim of the left in America now is owning the Chuds and owning the right. It is not about securing peace or promoting their own ideas. It's about owning the Chuds. And they do not want to be on the same side of the Chuds if they're anti-war in Ukraine. Because they see Russia through the prism of Russia is just like Trump is. They are on the side of our domestic enemies, so we want them defeated. We'll ignore the far-right nationalists and possible Nazis who are fighting for Ukraine and are involved in that government because Russia is, we think that Tucker and Trump sympathize with Russia, and we see Russia as everything we hate domestically. And so we're seeing this conflict through the eyes of domestic political conflict. And we want Russia destroyed because we see Russia they see Russia as a proxy for Middle America, which is not an accurate assessment, but that's how they view it. And so all these conflicts, global conflicts, are seen through that viewpoint of the bad guys in these conflicts are the bad guys because we can relate them to the bad guys. The true threat here, as they like to point out, the number one terror threat is white supremacists, and really what they mean is the number one terror threat is Middle Americans, and that's why they always are harping on this idea of threats to democracy, because the true threat is within us internally, and we need a stronger government to make sure that these domestic enemies don't get out of hand and they are crushed and they are prevented from destroying our democracy. And that is their main goal. And so if they put Russia on the same side as them, but it's not just Russia that they do this for. They also do this in Brazil with Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro is pro-America. He's even pro-Israel, far more than Lula. And by all accounts, if you're looking at his policies, he's also supports American businesses coming down to Brazil and these stuff. By traditional Cold War standards, Bolsonaro would be a dream president of a Latin American country. That's who that America would want in the Cold War to be running a Latin American country. But what did our deep state want? No, they wanted him gone. They clearly did not want Bolsonaro there. Why? Because he was too much like Trump. They saw him as part of this international right-wing conspiracy that they must destroy and threats to democracy, yada, yada, yada. They saw him as a part of that axis. So who did they support? They supported Lula, who... Now, one thing to note about Bolsonaro is friendlier to Putin than most Western countries. Also, I believe he has a more complicated relationship with China, not as hostile, but Lula is extremely pro-Putin, extremely pro-China, anti-America, I believe he's anti-Israel too. are more sympathetic to Palestinians because he's part of the international left, and he is not, and he's hostile to free enterprise. By all standards of traditional Cold War understanding of Latin America, he would be the person that they would try to have a coup against and to prevent from taking power. But in New America, they supported him. The American government wanted Lula. Why? Because he just was owning the chuds in Brazil. It was simply because of that matter. And so we've allowed Latin America to become entirely red. It is filled with like all these left-wing governments who are sympathetic to Russia, sympathetic to China. They at one time it was just we had to worry about Venezuela and Chavez and Maduro. Now, like everyone, it's like Maduro, not as overt, not as like Maduro. Chavez and Maduro really like to thumb their noses at America, or we're openly working with Russia and people that we considered enemies of the United States. And it's like a hostile power. And, Maduro will not, have a more friendly relationship with us. But a lot of the Maduro policy and the policy towards Venezuela is just something that is carried over from the Bush years and previous years where American foreign policy was working along traditional lines. While today it's just like simply like owning the chuds worldwide. Even though it is now much more anti-China than it was, I guess, under Obama years. Foreign policy. I mean, Biden hasn't significantly changed the China policy from what Trump was doing. I mean, both Trump and Biden have made American foreign policy much more anti-China, and also the deep state wants to be more anti-China. It's like part of the reason why we left Afghanistan is so we could pivot to Asia and focus on that. I mean, Afghanistan's in Asia, but pivot to the part of the Pacific part of Asia, and focus more on that and Europe. And they still see China as an enemy, but for when it comes to Europe and when it comes to Latin America, there is they care more about eliminating nationalists and right wingers from government than they do about like shoring up people who are actually supportive of our interests. So that's why it's ridiculous with Lula. I mean, Lula is not going to go full Maduro when it comes to American power, but it is interesting that that's who we wanted to win. Except for the guy who's like a traditional type of American ally, ruler, or a government figure in Latin America. And now we just don't care about Latin America anymore. We can't even topple Maduro. We keep trying, and we allow all these left-wing governments that are like to criticize us. Maybe it's because we realize that Latin America truly can't be independent of us, that we allow them to just like be critical of us and do this. But they're also, they occasionally do hurt American business interests in these countries. And, who was more better for American interests? It was clearly Bolsonaro, but the owning the chuds is just too important. It's the same with going with Europe. Still America, Biden criticizes Meloni. Giorgia Meloni, who's the new prime minister of Italy, sees this as a part of the threat to democracy, even though Meloni is incredibly very pro-America. She's donating more weapons and support to Ukraine. She's following the American line, but Washington would prefer a left-wing government than to a right-wing government, no matter what the right-wing government does. Except with the exception of Eastern Europe and Poland, where I think that they're more willing, especially in the Baltic states, where they're willing to allow those states to be nationalistic and limit immigration. And I think that's even the case with possibly even going into Western Europe. But the price is that they are firmly committed to the globalist American empire's interests against Russia. And that's part of the price. And I guess with Bolsonaro, there's like no price that he could pay to be on the side of America. Well, he could have supported sanctions against Putin, which Bolsonaro opposed, and because Brazil relies too much on Russia for its economic purposes. So, but Lula also opposes the sanctions. So it's not like they're getting someone much better in this position. I think Lula is more pro-China than Bolsonaro. It's like a matter of debate. So this is the policies with that. And I don't think the anti-war left is a long time coming and seeing. You know, you have to remember is that the anti-war left was still around in the late 2000s and early 2010s. You know, all the late night comedy shows were making fun of wars in Iraq and George W. Bush on the basis that he was a warmonger. But in 2011, the entire left supported intervention in Libya against Gaddafi. I remember all these liberal friends I had who were like, oh, Iraq war is bad, I hate neocons. And they were all like, I support the Libyan intervention. I had a guy in my fraternity who was like a liberal. And you believe it or not, there were a few liberals in the fraternity. He got really mad that I was like opposing the Libya intervention. And he's like, and I shared some article about it. He's like, this is neocon bullshit. And I was like, how is it neocon bullshit if it's like opposing the intervention? Like, that's not how this works. And so the entire left was supportive of Libya intervention. They were supportive of intervention in Syria, especially, I mean, even Antifa and all these people that you expect to be opposed to like the military industrial complex, they were supportive of it for a variety of reasons. I mean, with the far left, it was because of the Rojava or Rojava, whatever we want to, the Kurdish fighters there who had set up their own state, and they're like, oh, this is base left-wing state that they have. We got to support it. And that was their reason. And others, they were just manipulated into seeing Assad as an evil right-wing dictator who must be taken out. And so they supported intervention in Syria. You know, a lot of the left wanted us to pull out in Afghanistan, but you know, they weren't that major a force when we were pulling out. And even when it comes to Ukraine, like, you know, the entire left, like, you can go to any left-wing city in this country and you'll see Ukrainian flags. A Ukrainian flag is just as indicative of a person's politics as the pride flag. And it's the same way of just saying that you're liberal and that you're fully subscribed to the establishment views. And the left, the far left, does not have an interest in countering it. They may find it cringe. They may laugh about it. But ultimately, their greater worry is not being on the same side as cringe liberals, but on being on the same side as Tucker Carlson and far-right chuds, which they view as being more pro-Russia or wanting it into the war. And so that's why they'll either ignore the topic or be supportive of the continuance of the Ukraine war. And this brings to a point that it's not just that it's a disappearance of the anti-war left, it's that the left is entirely pro-establishment in all regards. No matter what they're talking about, it's like, oh, systemic racism or this white supremacist system. And, you know, they'll be very radical rhetoric. You know, I had a friend who was like arguing that there'd be more of an anti-war left because the left is moving further into anti-Americanism. That is true, but at the same time that they're rhetorically anti-American, they are literally pro-globalist American empire, that they are the gays' most loyal soldiers. Think about this. Think about all the Antifa who would come out to violently protest and demonstrate against people who were opposed to vax mandates or mask mandates. Antifa would come out and fight people who are opposed to vax mandates. It's like, what? Why is Antifa standing up on the behalf of vax mandates? Why are they so concerned with this? And then it's like coming out like they don't give a shit about the war. They're not protesting over Ukraine. They're all fully in favor of Ukraine and posting their Ukraine flags. That's like no difference from what the administration and the system wants. It's the same reason that they wanted the same reason that they wanted intervention in Syria. Like, there is pretty much no area of interest where they're on the different side of the globalist American empire. They just use different rhetoric. They're like, America's always been a white supremacist state, evil. We got to tear down the system by intervening in Syria and continuing to fund the brave Ukrainian fighters. You know, this is the left. And it's like, we must tear down the system by having vax mandates, you know, and mask mandates. We need a stronger system. So they're really the gays like foot soldiers. And that they always just go against people that they view as enemies of the establishment. They're never used against corporate, like they don't even do like anti-corporation like protests anymore. It's just like all directed against right-wingers and like people who are protesting drag queen story hour and these type of things. Like, it's not directed against anything of importance or anything that's like has any power in our society. And it's like entirely just pro-establishment line on everything. And yes, it has more anti-American rhetoric. Yes, they wince at the American flag. Yes, they think they'll talk about how the Star-Spangled Banner is racist and they need to replace that, or this historical figure is racist and they need to replace him. But there is a stronger loyalty to the globalist American empire as it exists and what its policies are than to the traditional heritage and symbolism of America. Different from even they have they'll even show discomfort with the military-industrial complex when it comes to Call of Duty games. Like the new Call of Duty game had a mission where you assassinate General Soleimani, like the famous one. I mean, they give him a different name in the clip, but it's like funny. I mean, and the Call of Duty games are clearly like the military-industrial complex being like, absolutely, we want this game. We need it to recruit kids. And I know a lot of kids who, growing up, who wanted to join the military due to Call of Duty games, which is like fine. I mean, it is what it is. It's like a country needs to find ways to recruit soldiers. But the entire left is like, oh, this is so evil, imperialist, military-industrial complex wants us to fight and die for it. And then at the same time, all these same idiots are like, oh, yo, man, we got to support Ukraine. We got to keep the billions going to them, man. And then they'll like always support interventions as they exist, but they'll call Call of Duty fascist for actually being, showing the military as it is. So they and maybe they'll want statues torn down, but they'll be happy with a new statue thrown up. And maybe they want less American jingoism, but at the same time, they are far more loyal to the globalist American empire. They're anti-traditional Americana, but they're not truly anti-Americanism because they believe in the values and principles of the globalist American empire more than anyone else, and they are far more loyal to it. And they don't threaten the establishment. They're the establishment's foot soldiers. And there's a good example of this from our good friend Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So Ted Cruz tweeted out abolish the IRS. And what was Ocasio-Cortez's response? What was AOC's response? Here it is. Notice how Republicans are frothing at the mouth to abolish the few enforcement mechanisms that target large-scale tax evasion and neo-Nazi groups. In one of his earlier acts, Trump also defunded operations countering right-wing violent extremist groups. Tells you a lot. So this is somebody who always claims herself as a radical against the establishment and a rebel who is defending the fucking IRS. Who the fuck wants to defend the IRS? The majority of Americans view the IRS as an annoyance and something they want less of, while she claims that the IRS are just some brave, plucky fighters fighting against evil corporations and neo-Nazi groups, which I don't get the neo-Nazi angle, and it's like a law enforcement angle. It's like an IRS agent is arresting all the neo-Nazis. What is that happening? But this is how they counter. This is how they reason themselves into supporting the system. So they view the system as the bulwark against their domestic enemies, which are viewed as these amorphous giant corporations, which they strangely have the same values as, but they still like to talk about billionaires and oligarchs and all the power they have. And some right-wingers like to emulate that when billionaires are clearly not the problem. It is I'd much rather have Elon Musk and others running things. And they clearly don't run things either. As about the government is able to bully Elon Musk into doing all these things, despite him being one of the wealthiest people, the wealthiest man on earth ever. And it's the same with a lot of these guys that they may have some goofy interests and stuff, but they're a much easier target than it is to blame the actual system that works. And the system is able to spank and bully and neuter a lot of these guys into doing what they want, as can be seen in a lot of cases with Elon Musk, as can be seen in the cases like Bill Gates and Bezos and a lot of other people, is that the true power does not lie with billionaires. It lies with the government, with the globalist American empire. And so a lot of people get distracted by this, but the left still likes to see this, even though they defend what Bill Gates' vaccines and they defend, everything else that a lot of these billionaires are pushing and them giving money to Black Lives Matter, et cetera, et cetera. But they'll still talk about the faceless and nameless billionaires who are getting away with things, but that's why they need the plucky IRS agents. So that's one. And the other is bringing up neo-Nazi groups. So That's how you appeal to the left, is like saying that these government agencies are at work protecting our democracy from evil billionaires and evil neo-Nazi groups. So what is the rebellion? They like to smoke weed. That is it. That is literally it. I made a tweet saying that the four pillars of American culture now are weed, rap, the NFL, and Marvel movies. Some people got mad and like, oh, there's something else. There's more prime American culture. That's a topic for another day. I'm probably not going to get into that, but to explaining that position, I tweeted it out. I got too many other things to talk about today. But with weed, it's like every person who smokes weed thinks that they're a rebel against the system. They're like, oh man, now I'm far out. Now I'm seeing the whole picture, dude. And the picture is, it's like the billionaires, they're dividing us by like the color of our skin. And really what we should do, man, is that we come together and realize we've got a lot more in common than we thought we did. And we smoke weed and we like, this is what the billionaires don't want us to do, man, is to just like chill out and listen to Bob Marley, dude. And this is like what they really think. It's like them just like smoking a fuck ton of weed and like that this is like the system is like, no, you can't smoke weed. And it's like, just did, bro. And then it's like, no, the whole system collapses because they smoke weed. It's like the funniest thing is like potheads are like the most like compliant people to the system because they're like lowering their testosterone and they're just getting high and being slugs all day. But they all think that they're like their biggest threat to the system. Like every conspiracy theorist is like a huge pothead. And really they're just like entertaining themselves with stupidity while they're just sitting on the couch eating junk food and like getting high more. And that's like, it's a soma from a Brave New World that they are giving out, and that's what keeps everyone content and happy and compliant with the system and not worrying about things. But I mean, yeah, the soma, that's part of the effect of the soma is that you'll believe that the pyramids were brought by space aliens or what have you. But you're ultimately not a threat. You're just smoking a lot of weed, and you're talking about the billionaires, bro. And now you need to take all their money so we can have like universal basic weed allowance, bro. So we can all chill out and realize the better things in life. And that's what a lot of these people are into. So that's like their rebellion is smoking weed, which is no rebellion at all. That's like the greatest pledge of allegiance you can have to the globalist American empire is to smoke up, is to toke up. I mean, if you're a pothead, you are a loyal gay soldier. So salute to you for that. Now, the final point I want to make is this campaign pitch about threats to democracy, this is like all they talk about. When I'm in the gym, they sometimes have the CNN or MSNBC on, and I can just see threats to democracy is always the number one thing. And it's always like comes up in the news. Like several of these people, like Don Beyer, I think was like a Virginia congressman. The Washington Times was reporting about how this guy has the threats to democracy are a serious concern. And I saw an interesting debate between Shadi Hamid and Mehdi Hassan, who both God honest legacy Americans were debating. Shadi was probably on the better side versus Mehdi. Hamid was trying to dispute this idea that there's like these threats to democracy and like this is like hyperbolic rhetoric. And Hassan was going like, no, not at all. This is so true. They're trying to deny black people the right to vote. And it was Hassan's show, and Hamid was like, what? Like, where are they trying to deny black people the right to vote? And they're like, they've got poll watchers that are preventing it right now. And this is what all these election laws are about. And if you're watching it from a TV, I think it was like on MSNBC or I think even their streaming platform, you're supposed to see that Hassan is so right and Hamid is like this crazed lunatic for not believing that they're denying black people the right to vote. And so it's just on such thin gruel that they go with there's like a threat to democracy. And fact checkers will even do this. Like there was like a fact check last week of like it was like a completely subjective stance on Republicans that they were saying. It was saying that it was an Associated Press fact check, and the fact check said that conservatives were misrepresenting these claims that terrorists are people on the terror watch list are being being caught at the border. And it's like saying, well, it's not entirely accurate because one, these people are on the terror watch list, but they're being quickly apprehended. And thus, there is no threat to them. And they're misrepresenting what this is. So these are misleading claims. So they act like very autistic and spurgy, that there's like one little minute detail that might not be 100% accurate, and they'll go with that. But at the same time, fact checkers will say, it's mostly true that Republicans threaten democracy. It's like that's mostly true. It's like we have to agree with this. So they're all on this idea of like what is threatening democracy, and they can't even really articulate what it is. They'll just like they're Republican poll watchers. They now require you to have an ID to vote. Mail-in ballots, there's not as many locations. Democracy's over. And it's like, what are Republicans going to do when they take power that's going to threaten democracy? They may defund the IRS. We may not be able to hire 87,000 freedom fighters to combat corporations and neo-Nazis. And this is what they actually genuinely believe. And so it's working among their own base. Like it is fever pitch. Like if you watch CNN, MSNBC, you think that you're going to a concentration camp if the Republicans win. Like democracy is completely over if Republicans gain Congress. It's unclear what they're going to do that's going to undermine democracy, but don't worry. Democracy is over if they win. And so there's like some people like John Meacham comes out. John Meacham needs to be attacked more because he is a Biden advisor. He is ghostwriting speeches for Biden. This guy is a Biden advisor, and they always bring him on as like a unbiased presidential historian. And he comes on and he's like, "This is the most important election since the Civil War. This is about the future of the country, whether we're going to have democracy or not." And it's like, it's a fucking midterm. Like the Republicans aren't going to be able to do much when they even have Congress. Like, what do you expect is going to happen? Like, and so they make the stakes so much higher. When they say this stuff, they want people like Twitter. They want these institutions to clamp down on free speech. They want the institutions to clamp down on the political enemies because they're just saying they're beyond the pale. This is not normal political disagreements. This is our democracy we're talking about. And all that democracy rhetoric is about ensuring we have less democracy and that these institutions clamp down on our ability to speak freely and to vote freely and to think freely and to have different ideas, and that only one idea is allowed. And that's what these idiots like John Meacham says, that we're allowed to speak. And that's democracy to them. And so it's gonna be interesting when Republicans win in November, and like all these Democrats then have to say that democracy is over. And one funny thing is, like, Democrats, I didn't get to this point on Twitter, but a lot of liberals are saying they're gonna leave Twitter if they do. I take this as about as seriously as liberals were saying if George W. Bush was going to win in 2004, they're going to move to Canada. It's always the same story. It's like Democrats always say, if they win, I'm moving to Canada. None of them did this. They did this in 2016. They're like, I'm moving out of the country. None of them did that. That's the same with Twitter. They're all going to stay. Everyone's going to stay on Twitter. No one's going to migrate elsewhere. So that's one point I wanted to make on Twitter on all that before I move on to the cognitive leak questions. So that's it for the regular episode. Now onto the cognitive leak questions. As a reminder, you too can get the power to ask me questions or suggest guests and topics if you sign up for the cognitive elite option at Highly Respected Substack. And that's at highlyrespected.substack.com. And make sure to sign up for the IQ supplements while you're there if you haven't already. But I'm assured that most of the hardcore listeners have already done that. So I don't know. I like just putting out that reminder. The first question is from Tim. Tim asks, like, Scott, why are you defending Tom Brady so much? I thought you weren't watching the NFL. That's a good question. You know, as a part of the Greerhead Pledge, I say, put up my right hand. I say, I will not listen to rap. I will not. Actually, I'm messing up. I forgot. I added a new thing. It's like, I will not smoke weed. I will not listen to rap. I will not watch the NFL. I will not see the new Marvel movie. I should just say I will not see the Marvel movie because, some people may think that they can go see the old Marvel movies. It's like, no, you are not going to see any of the Marvel movies. So that is an important part of it, but people are aware of the NFL. I hear news about the NFL. I just don't watch it. Once again, this is about it's watching the NFL. You can hear about the NFL and maybe read about the NFL to know what's going on. But anyway, Tom Brady is getting divorced from his wife Giselle, who Bunkin, who is they're splitting, and it's like they have been having long marital problems. It's unclear what it is, but it seems like a big part of it is that Tom Brady refuses to retire, and he's going along with his dream, his destiny to keep playing football up until I guess he dies, maybe until he's 50. He doesn't want to give up. He's not. I know he's not having a good year this year because once again, not watching the NFL, reading about the NFL. I know that their Buccaneers are not doing too well this year. And so maybe he should have just retired. He did offer to retire earlier this year, but then he came back to play, and I don't think his wife is there. And it's just a funny scenario. I think one thing is I have been having a lot of fun with it, even though we don't know why this is going on. I always like to bring up the good men scarcity with this, and there's like women on there who complaining about Tom Brady. It's like there is no man that you could imagine as more perfect for what like a theoretical American woman would want than like Tom Brady. Okay, this guy is keeping his youthful looks into his 40s. Multi-millionaire makes I almost said 5 figures a year. He's not making 5 figures a year. He's making 8 figures a year. He is the greatest quarterback of all time, if not the greatest athlete of all time. He's got 7 Super Bowl rings. Like this guy is like insanely successful. He's insanely, he's just like, even has like, he's like, advertisers want him, desire him so much because he still has like these model looks, like there's all these things. Like Tom Brady is just like seen as like the all-American like Giga Chad. And like it's still not good enough because he's like not giving up his dream. And I mean a lot of this is due to the fact that he probably doesn't want to retire because he feels like he will be a nobody if he's not playing football. And like what gives his life meaning is playing football. And without that, he feels that his life will not have meaning. And maybe this is like a big thing that he can't understand that like, I mean, he's like a dedicated, from by all accounts, like a dedicated family man. Like he's not like leaving his family behind, but maybe they feel that he needs to spend more time with his family. And maybe it's like, it's like he's in his 40s. He takes a lot of beatings. I can only imagine like a football player waking up on Monday morning, how much pain they're in. After a game day, but he's like doing this, but he feels that like this is what gives his life meaning and drive. And it's like the same with a lot of people. It's why a lot of people never retire until like they can't do what they can. It's like the same with journalists and professors and others, is that they don't know what will give their life meaning. It's the same, especially true with politicians who will like not retire. They will just die being politicians rather than giving up their seat. I mean, like Dianne Feinstein's an example of this. I mean, she's clearly going senile, yet she's still running for office. She's still in office. And there's a couple of other examples like this. This is what gives their life meaning. This is what they feel makes their life meaningful. Without that, they're like, what is life to me? And I think that Tom Brady is going through that. And Giselle is not happy with that, and that's why she's leaving him. But I do think it's like another important thing. I think I do have to give hats off to Tom Brady, is that he is refusing to cave to his wife and to doing what his dream is. Like a lot of American men won't do that. As I pointed out, most American men will get divorced because their wife got the ick over how they make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and other very important issues of what gives women the ick. Like it's so funny reading like women's like, oh, I met this nice guy. Like there's a Daily Mail article about like some woman who's working for a radio show, and she's like listing her reasons why, like whether to break up or stay with a guy. And her top reason, it's like, oh, he's so sweet. He like really understands me. He really goes the extra mile. That's like the pros. And the con, like the top of the con is like, I really don't like the way he squints. it's like, man, it's rough out there. So maybe Tom Brady, maybe his eyesight isn't so good, and maybe squinted, and Giselle was like, oh man, I got the ick. Or like he didn't win a Super Bowl last year, so she got the ick. It's like thinking about all these things like a modern American women. So it's like a good pushback against this idea that the reason why women are not marrying is because of a good men scarcity. It's like Tom Brady is getting divorced. Like, I don't think it's like partially that. I think that's like a completely different scenario from most what most Americans are facing. But if you read up on like these TikToks of how they got the ick from their man, there was another thing that was somebody sharing like a Joe Rogan clip of like this non-white woman. I forget if she's like Hispanic or black, but she's like laughing about her boyfriend getting his ass beat in some fight that she probably instigated. Women love instigating fights to get their man to go and fight for them. And she's like laughing about this and it's like, oh man, I got the ick. I could never be with this man anymore after he got his ass beat in a fight. And it's like looking at all the other like TikToks and those type of posts about like what women get the ick for. And it's like, I don't think good men scarcity. It's not like he doesn't know how to pay bills or he can't keep a job. It's like, oh, I didn't like how he chewed gum or I got the ick over him, what type of tennis shoes he picked. It's like the most minor things. And it's like, oh, I got the ick over how he scratches his nose. It's like this type of things. It's like, these are like the grounds for divorce and upending your relationship. And so it's not a good man scarcity. I think it's more that women are not willing to, it's probably true for men too. But I think it's to a lesser extent because women obviously have more choices on the market, as shown by all the studies on dating apps where it's like all women are getting swiped right on. They're all getting matches, while it's like only like the top 10% of men are getting anywhere near the matches of like the bottom 40% of women. So there's way more options for them, but they'll just like, if something's imperfect, they will not accept less than perfect. And society tells them not to accept less than perfect. And so it's tough out there. So it's not a good man scarcity that's at fault. I think there's a lot of other issues, but that's a topic for another day. But I'm staying with Tom Brady. Even though I say don't watch the NFL, we got to stand with Tom. They hate Tom. They really do hate Tom because he's a good-looking white Chad, and he's like always winning, and they hate that he wins all the time. And they really hate him for who he is. And so I stand with Tom Brady with that. I think it will make the sport. Well, this will probably be good for us, but I think they're going to have fewer stars when like Tom Brady retires. I mean, they've got like a few other people. I mean, they got like Josh Allen who's coming up, but I don't think he has quite the star power of Tom Brady. And Aaron Rodgers is also expected to retire soon as well. So yeah, but that'll probably be good with us. Maybe fewer people will watch the NFL and they'll take the Greerhead pledge. So that's the first Cognitive League question. The second one comes from our good friend Johnny Chungus. I have to remind you guys, like, I maybe need to send another email. It's nothing wrong with Johnny Chungus sending comments every week, but I just got to say, like, other people can send comments. It's not just Johnny Chungus. And so I appreciate that, but I'm just saying I gotta send an email to the kind of elite people. I'll do that this week. But it's just showing that you can literally ask as many questions as you want. Don't be shy. Just send the message over, and I'll answer them. But from Johnny Chungus, it's a 2-part question about Ron DeSantis. He says, 1, do you think Ron DeSantis is like another Mitt Romney, like some very online people claim, or should that comparison be reserved for the likes of Larry Hogan? No, I don't think he's like another Mitt Romney. He is more of an establishment guy or typical Republican politician, but he's not Mitt Romney. Like Mitt Romney was driven by like principles of being like centrist and moderate. He had some like okay ideas, but they're like him as a person and him as like his political principles, he's really driven by this desire to be centrist and respectable, which that is not the claim for DeSantis. For all DeSantis' faults, like, no, I think that's unfair comparison between the two, even though they, Ron DeSantis is far more establishmentarian than people think, and especially compared to Trump. But he's not Mitt Romney. Larry Hogan is a more apt comparison. So second question, if he turns out to be DeSantis to be a disappointment in 24, 28, are more charismatic people like Glenn Youngkin and Kerry Lake the real successors to Trump and better alternatives to DeSantis? Well, there's a couple of things to take apart here. One, if DeSantis runs in 24 against Trump, his presidential hopes are done. Trump will have an everlasting grudge against him, and as long as he's alive, will use his energy to go against him. And DeSantis lacks the charisma factor. He cannot overcome that. He he really depends on conservative media pedestaling him and portraying him as the great hope, as the greatest thing since sliced bread. And he really cannot be his own man and how he electrifies crowds and motivates crowds. I mean, this last weekend, they're trying to say like, oh, this huge crowd for Lee Zeldin. It's all due to DeSantis' electrifying rhetoric. It's probably more due to Lee Zeldin and Republicans in the state being really excited at the prospect that they may win a statewide race for the first time in years. I think the 2000 Senate race between Rick Lazio, I think that was like the Republican, and Hillary Clinton was like the last time there was like a really competitive statewide race. There may have been a time. I remember. Well, it turned out to be not that competitive. I mean, Hillary Clinton won pretty handily, if I'm not mistaken. But that was like the last time. But so I think it's more that people are just excited for Lee Zeldin, and there's a lot of Republicans in that area, and they're excited that at the prospect of actually winning for once, and it'd be a big deal if Lee Zeldin wins. But he's not there. He's not like somebody's capable. He's not this like charismatic orator that people will follow around and be their figure and leader. He just doesn't have it. He is dependent on being like propped up by these institutions and conservative media to succeed. And if he runs in 2024 and he loses, which he will if he challenges Trump, it's over for him. It's done. He's not going to be the nominee in 2028 because Trump, as long as Trump is still alive, and I think like Trump surrogates are still alive, they're going to still say do not vote for this guy because he is an enemy of what we're about. So he would not be the candidate. When whether the alternatives are Glenn Youngkin and Kari Lake, Glenn Youngkin is also not that charismatic. I don't think Glenn Youngkin is significantly more charismatic than DeSantis. I think he's better on the stump. I mean, DeSantis is too wooden. He has a weird voice. I can't complain about voices, but he's not authentic. He's stilted. It's like he's reading from note cards. He tries too hard to be funny. He tries too hard to be like this populist leader, and it just doesn't work out for him. Youngkin is who he is. He's not like that charismatic, but it doesn't come off as like forced at like DeSantis. Kari Lake is insanely charismatic. I think Kari Lake, there's probably some reasons to be a little bit more skeptical of Kari Lake because Kari Lake, I don't think has any political principles whatsoever. She is saying the stuff we want to say, but a big difference between her and Trump, and this is probably more similar to DeSantis. I think DeSantis is like a genuine conservative. He may have been more convinced by the stuff, but instinctually he's not like Trump. He's not like a nationalist type guy. Kari Lake is just doing what it is to be elected. There's nothing wrong with that. Is like she's along with us, but you do have to be a little bit skeptical as she becomes a leader, and you can't trust her instincts in the same way that you can trust Trump's instincts. And Trump's instincts are very good, and that's always why I said that like a huge reason to stay with Trump is that Trump, compared to other Republicans, is that his instincts, he's instinctually based, which you cannot say of other Republicans. Kari Lake is doing what we want. She is insanely charismatic. People really get electrified by her. I think she would be a more natural successor to Trump in 2028. As long as she wins re-election in 2026. Well, she has to win election this year. I think she's going to win election. She's pulling ahead in the polls. Her candidate is like, talks like a baby. She's like, hello, and she talks like a new intern, just out of college, who's just like given an authority position and she doesn't really know how to do it. It's also really unfortunate that they didn't debate. I mean, Kari Lake would have annihilated this woman. But that's it. I think Kari Lake would be the more natural successor, but it'd be an interesting battle between Glenn Youngkin, Kari Lake, and DeSantis, who are all vying to be that. I don't know if Youngkin is vying to be the successor to Trump, but Youngkin presents a more respectable establishment side, like more friendly to suburbanites side of this, not confrontational, not trying to imitate Trump's style, but he still has some of Trump's positions, especially when it comes to like critical race theory. And I think he'd probably be decent on immigration, at least compared to the old establishment. Maybe I could be wrong on that. Well, like Lake imitates Trump's style and charisma and has it down pat and is, just has that. Well, DeSantis tries to imitate Trump's style, but not successfully. And he tries to take Trump's policies and go further along with that. well, Carrie Lake just imitates the style. Youngkin, but no, she does have the policies too. And I think, but if a lot of this is star power and your ability to connect with the base, and out of those three, I think Carrie Lake is head and shoulders above those three, and she'd be the strongest successor to Trump in 2028. But that's a long way from now. That's 6 years from now. That is we still have a midterms to go through. We still have one presidential election to go through. It is hard to predict what 2028 will be like. Who knows what it's like? But from this perspective, and if Carrie Lake wins her race, I think she is the most likely successor to Trump. So that's my thoughts on that. And that's it for today's Highly Respected. We're going to have an incredible episode, our incredible IQ Summit later this week, as always. So be on the lookout for that. So until next time, stay respected.